I pulled into the gym parking lot at night, and if I had just gone home instead, none of this would have happened. I know how that sounds, like something you say after the fact when everything's already gone wrong. But I mean it. That Tuesday night changed the way I move through the world, the way I look at people, the way I trust my gut or ignore it. I'd been going to this gym for about 2 years. It was a 24-hour place, one of those mid-sized chains. Not fancy, but clean enough. The kind of gym where the front desk staff disappears after 9 and the only thing keeping the doors locked is your key fob. I like going late. No wait for equipment, no crowds, no small talk. Just me, the weights, and whatever podcast I had queued up. That night I was tired. I'd had a long shift at work and honestly I almost talked myself out of going. But I had a competition coming up in 6 weeks and I couldn't afford to skip leg day. So I grabbed my bag, drove the 12 minutes, tapped my fob and walked in. The gym was empty, or at least it felt empty. The lights were on their nighttime setting, dimmed in the cardio section, brighter near the free weights. The TVs mounted on the walls were cycling through news with the volume muted. Everything looked normal. I signed in on the kiosk, which is something the gym had started requiring even for late-night visits. Time stamp, member ID. I remember thinking it was annoying. Now I'm glad it existed. I went straight to the squat rack in the back corner and started warming up. About 15 minutes in, the front door beeped. Someone else coming in. I didn't think anything of it. It happened occasionally. I glanced over out of habit and saw a guy, probably mid-30s, baseball cap, gym bag over one shoulder. He didn't look at me, just walked toward the lockers. I put my earbuds back in. 20 minutes passed, maybe 25. I was deep into my third working set when something made me pause. Not a sound exactly, more like an absence of one. The gym had a low ambient hum to it. Ventilation, equipment on standby, the refrigerator unit near the smoothie bar. And then I realized I couldn't hear the guy moving around anymore. No weights dropping, no cable machine clicking, nothing. I pulled one earbud out and looked around. The gym looked empty again. I figured he'd left. Some people come in, use the bathroom, realize they forgot something and leave. It happens. I went back to my set. It was on my way to the water fountain, maybe 40 minutes into my workout, that I noticed the locker room door was propped open slightly. Not all the way, just a few inches. I remembered the guy going in there earlier. There was no reason for that door to be open. I stood there for a second, just looking at it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I'd been listening to too many crime podcasts. I filled my water bottle, went back to the rack, and loaded up for my final set. I was halfway through the last rep when I saw him in the mirror. He was standing near the entrance to the stretching area, maybe 30 feet behind me, just standing there. He hadn't been there a minute ago. He wasn't stretching. He wasn't doing anything. He was just watching me lift. I racked the bar, turned around, made direct eye contact. He smiled, not in a friendly way, in a way that didn't reach anything, flat, practiced. "You training for something?" he said. Normal question. Totally normal question that people ask in gyms every single day. But something about the way he asked it, the timing of it, the fact that he'd been standing there silently first, made my skin go cold. "Competition," I said. Short, didn't invite more. He nodded slowly, still smiling. Then he asked what I did for work. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. Nobody asks that. Not in a nearly empty gym at midnight, not after watching someone in silence, not as a follow-up to a conversation about lifting. I said I worked in logistics and started packing up my bag. Not rushing, just moving with purpose. He kept talking. Asked where the gym was located relative to the highway. Asked if I came here often. Each question felt like it was building toward something I didn't want to reach the end of. Like he was trying to map out my life, one answer at a time. I zipped my bag, picked up my keys and said, "Have a good night." I walked toward the exit. Not fast, not slow, steady. I heard him start walking behind me. I pushed through the front door into the parking lot and walked directly to my car. My keys were already in my hand, I'd made sure of that. I got in, locked the door, and watched the entrance in my rearview mirror. He came out about 15 seconds later, stood just outside the door. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't heading to a car. He was just standing there watching mine. I drove away. I didn't peel out, didn't panic, just left. I called the gym the next morning and told them what happened. Gave them the time stamp, described the guy, told them he'd propped the locker room door open, and had been behaving in a way I couldn't fully articulate but couldn't ignore either. They pulled the footage. The manager called me back 3 hours later. His voice was different than it had been in the morning, quieter. He told me that on the footage, the man had spent almost the entire time I was there inside the locker room. That during the period I was working out, he had moved my gym bag, which I'd left near the rack, and looked through it. He'd taken a photo of my driver's license using his phone. They turned everything over to the police. I don't know what he was planning. I never found out who he was. The police followed up a few times, but eventually the trail went quiet. What I do know is this. He knew my name, my address, and what I looked like before I drove home that night. And if I hadn't left when I did, if I had stayed to finish stretching, or gone to the locker room to change, or just ignored my gut one more time, I don't know what conversation I'd be telling you about instead. I never went back to that gym. I moved to Austin 3 years ago for work, and the first thing I did before I even unpacked all my boxes was find a gym. Not one of those big commercial chains. A smaller place, about 10 minutes from my apartment, family-owned. The kind of gym where the equipment is older but solid, where regulars know each other by name, and where you can actually hear yourself think. I went every morning before work. 5:30, sometimes earlier. That early, there were maybe 6 or 7 of us in the building at any given time. Same faces, same routines. You get comfortable with that. You stop thinking twice about anything. His name was Derek. He started showing up about 4 months after I joined. Quiet guy. Mid-40s, stocky, always wore the same gray hoodie regardless of the temperature outside. He never talked much, but he was friendly enough when you made eye contact, gave you a nod, maybe a half smile. Nothing that set off any alarm. He started spotting me on bench press one morning when my usual partner didn't show. I didn't ask him to. He just walked over and said, "Go ahead, I got you," confident, like it was already decided. I thanked him afterward. We talked for maybe 5 minutes. Normal stuff, how long have you been lifting, what do you do for work? He said he was between jobs, doing some contracting. Vague enough that I didn't push, but not weird enough that I remembered it later. That's the thing about people like Derek. Nothing they do individually feels like a red flag. It's only when you zoom out and look at the whole picture that your stomach drops. He started showing up exactly when I did. At first I thought it was coincidence. We had similar schedules, similar routines. It made sense that we'd overlap. But then I changed my time, started coming in at 6 instead of 5:30. He changed too. I came in on a Saturday once, a day I almost never trained. He was already there. I still told myself it was nothing, that I was being paranoid, that not everything is sinister just because the timing lines up. I kept my head down and focused on my workouts. The shift happened on a Tuesday in November. I was in the locker room after my session, towel around my waist, digging through my bag for my phone. The room was empty except for me. I found my phone, unlocked it, and saw a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "Good session today." That last set looked heavy. I stood there and read it twice. Then I read it again. My first thought was that it was meant for someone else. Wrong number. I almost typed back to ask who it was. Then I thought about it. About Derek. About the way he'd been gravitating into the same space as me for weeks. I didn't respond. I screenshot it and locked my phone and got dressed faster than I ever had in my life. I didn't confront him. I know some people would've, but I've seen what happens when you corner someone like that before you understand what you're actually dealing with. So I started paying attention instead. He knew things he shouldn't have. He mentioned my car once, a specific thing about the parking spot I used, near the side entrance. He referenced a conversation I'd had with the front desk man about renewing my membership, a conversation that happened when he wasn't visibly nearby. He asked me once casually whether I was still living over on Lamar, and I had never told him where I lived. Not even close to it. That one broke through every rationalization I had left. I went to the gym owner the next morning. Older guy ran the place with his son. I laid it out as calmly as I could, the texts, the schedule matching, the comment about my address. He listened. He didn't dismiss me. He pulled up the sign-in logs and checked the camera footage from the parking lot going back 6 weeks. Derek had been photographing my car, not just glancing at it, standing next to it with his phone out. Multiple times, different days. The owner called the police that afternoon. What came out over the next 2 weeks was the part that still keeps me up at night. Derek had been in a similar situation at another gym across town. A different member had filed a complaint about him 8 months earlier. That complaint had been documented, but nothing formal had happened. No charges. He just stopped going to that gym, and he'd shown up at mine. The police ran his information and found that he had a record. Nothing violent, but there were prior incidents. One involving an individual he'd fixated on at a workplace, another involving a neighbor. Each time, he'd moved on before anything escalated to the point of arrest. Each time, whoever was on the receiving end was left shaken but without a clear legal resolution. He knew exactly how far to push without crossing a line that would stick. He was trespassed from the gym. The police issued a warning. That was the extent of what they could do with the evidence available, and they were honest with me about it. They told me to document everything going forward, to let them know if contact continued. It didn't, at least not that I could confirm, but I switched gyms anyway, changed my routine, started varying my schedule. Small things, practical things, the kind of adjustments that feel absurd when you're making them because they remind you that your life has been altered by someone else's behavior. You go to the gym to build something, strength, routine, discipline. You're in your own head, focused on your own progress. You assume the people around you are doing the same. Most of them are, but some of them are focused on you. And by the time you realize it, they already know more about your life than you ever agreed to share. If you've ever gone to the gym alone late at night, I need you to stop what you're doing and listen to this. I used to think the gym was the one place where nothing could go wrong. You go in, you work hard, you go home. It's simple, it's safe. At least that's what I believed until the night I met him. I'd been going to a 24-hour gym in Columbus for about 2 years. It was one of those big chain places, fluorescent lights, rubber floors, rows of equipment that smelled faintly of metal and disinfectant. I had a routine. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Late sessions, usually starting around 10 at night because I worked long shifts and that was the only time that made sense. Most nights there were maybe 3 or 4 other people scattered across the floor. Sometimes fewer. I never minded. I actually preferred it that way. Less noise. Less waiting for machines, just me and the work. It started in early November. I was on the treadmill when this guy came in. Tall, maybe 6'2", built, but not in a gym rat way, more like someone who used to do physical labor for a living. He was probably in his mid-40s with a short beard going gray at the edges. He didn't say anything to anyone. Just picked a bench near the back, loaded up the bar and started lifting. I didn't think twice about him. He was there the next session, and the one after that. By the 3rd week I started noticing things, not dramatic things, just small things that your brain files away without really telling you why. He never wore headphones. Most people at the gym are locked into their own world, earbuds in, head down. Not him. He just lifted in silence, eyes moving slowly around the room. I told myself he was just one of those guys who like to stay aware of his surroundings. Some people are like that. Then he started talking to me. The first time it was normal enough. He asked how long I'd been training, what kind of program I was running. Standard gym small talk. I was polite. We talked for maybe 5 minutes, then went back to our own routines. But after that, he started coming over every single session. Always casual, always friendly. And I noticed he had a way of steering the conversation toward personal things, where I worked, whether I drove or took the bus, if I lived nearby. I started giving vague answers. Not too far. Somewhere east of here. I told myself I was just being private, which is normal. But honestly, something in my gut was starting to pull at me. The night that changed everything was a Wednesday in December. I got there around 10:15. The place was almost empty, just one other man on the elliptical near the front, and a kid in a hoodie doing pull-ups by the far wall. The guy came in about 20 minutes after me, but this time, something was different. He walked in and immediately looked straight at me, like he'd already known exactly where I'd be. He didn't scan the room first the way most people do when they enter a space. He just looked right at me. He came over almost immediately. We talked. At some point, he asked if I ever got tired of the drive home this late. I said it wasn't bad. He nodded slowly and then he said, "You take Meridian, right? Or do you cut through Broad Street?" I didn't answer right away, because I had never told him which direction I drove home. I had never told him anything specific about my route. I hadn't even mentioned what part of the city I lived in beyond East Side. I said something like, "I take different ways depending on traffic," and laughed it off. But my hands had gone cold inside my lifting gloves. I cut my session short. I told myself I was overthinking it. Columbus is a big city, but it's not unusual for someone to live in the same general area. Maybe he'd seen me at a light once. Maybe it was a coincidence. I packed my bag and headed for the exit. He followed me out, not immediately, not in an obvious way, but I was in the parking lot halfway to my car when I heard the door open behind me. I looked back. It was him. He was walking in the same direction, keys in hand, eyes down at his phone. He got into a dark SUV parked 2 spots away from me. I got into my car and sat there for a second, hands on the wheel. He didn't move. His engine didn't start. His lights didn't come on. He just sat there. I pulled out of the spot and drove. I didn't go home. I drove to a gas station about a mile away, parked under the bright lights by the pumps and sat there for 15 minutes. Then I looped back around a different way, watching my mirrors. I didn't see him behind me. When I got home, I sat in my driveway with the doors locked for a long time before I went inside. The next day I called the gym and spoke to the manager. I told him everything. The conversations, the questions about my route, the parking lot. I described the guy. The manager got quiet for a moment, then asked me to hold. When he came back, he told me that another member, a man who usually came in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, had filed an informal complaint about the same man 2 weeks earlier. He'd said he was asking too many personal questions, making him uncomfortable. They hadn't pulled his membership because the complaint wasn't formal. He said they'd look into it. 3 days later, I got a call back. His membership had been revoked. The manager didn't tell me exactly why, just that they'd reviewed some things and made a decision. I don't know what they found. I don't know what he was doing or what he intended. Maybe nothing. Maybe he was just socially off and didn't understand boundaries. But I've thought about that night in the parking lot 1,000 times since. The way he sat there. The way his engine never started while I was still in that lot. The way he already knew which roads I drove home on. I still go to the gym. Different one now. Daytime hours only. And I never ever tell anyone which way I drive home. If these stories got under your skin, hit that subscribe button and press the bell icon so you never miss next stories. Leave a comment below and tell me if you enjoyed these gym horror stories. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay safe out there.